Welcome everybody to Infowars.com. I'm your host, HolyJoe Rock and Roll, for the 5th hour here at the Alex Jones Show. We got a big show for you. I only got 1 hour, got a lot to cover, and we will be taking your calls. I'll put the number up momentarily where you can call in, talk to me. All right. So the first item that I'd like to discuss is regarding what's been happening in Vegas, Las Vegas, and why we are not getting accurate information. And the only way to look at this is simple. It's very simple. Think about this. Whenever there is a white supremacist that fits the narrative of the left, we know about it immediately. And it's in the news for weeks and weeks and weeks, right? Just recently, there was a so-called refugee from, I believe it was Somalia, who did a copycat of what Dylan Roof did. Now, the fact that he was African, the fact that he was not a white supremacist, it was a black man killing white people, white Christians, it was a one-day story. There's nothing reported on it, right? So let's apply that same logic to what happened in Las Vegas. Obviously, he's not a white supremacist. Otherwise, it would be the story. It would be the story. And we would hear about it forever and ever, right? We'd be hearing about it now. But what happened was, immediately after this attack, this terrorist attack, whatever you want to call it, we had Democratic congresspeople talking about gun control. Now, I did a video on my channel, on YouTube, this channel here, Joe Bonsai Poland, describing one of those Democrat congressmen with this bill to do more gun control. And the point is, this guy passed all the background checks. There is no gun control that would stop this attack, unfortunately. So the question is, what was his motivation? Now, some people are saying that he was just insane. He was just a bad guy. What's there to know? The point is that the fact that he didn't leave a note is proof that he was insane, that he was a bad guy, and that he wanted you to know that he was a bad guy. Now, that may be true. That may be true, but where is the information that would really point to that, right? And no one is really coming out and saying that. By the way, the chat's open. I got Super Chat. If anybody wants to make a contribution through Super Chat, that's available. Help support this broadcast. And also, we'll be talking about some other ways you can help support InfoWars. Fighting the globalists, fighting the corporatists, fighting the unelected bureaucrats who are trying to control our lives. It's happening everywhere, except in places where people are standing up and resisting. You are the resistance, and I'm going to give you a case in point from here in Poland. I'm coming for you live from Krakow, Poland, or Kraków, as it is colloquially pronounced. And I'll give you an example of that. But getting back to Las Vegas. Jesus Campos, he just disappeared. He just disappeared. Let's take you to that article, which I have over here, in the modernized InfoWar. Jesus Campos, he just disappeared. Now, why did he disappear? He was supposed to appear and give some interviews, and he just disappeared. He vanished. Now, there's a couple of questions, a couple of possibilities. Number one, is he an illegal alien? Or is he not legally in the country? Is a possibility. And that's why he just disappeared, because we don't want that to come out, that we had a major incident here where an illegal person was involved. And I don't know. I mean, actually, you know, the globalists would probably promote that. That, hey, we have an illegal immigrant who was a so-called hero. Or is there something deeper to the story? Was he involved? Possibly involved. And got shot, double-crossed, whatever. I mean, these questions should be answered already. Why are they hiding this guy? the fact that we're not getting clear answers really points to a more sinister possibility. It's not even a conspiracy theory. It's just there is no answer. There is no logical answer, right? And that makes no sense. Why would you do that? If you are in charge, you're the sheriff of Las Vegas, or you're the FBI, it shouldn't take this much time. It's been, what, over 18 days or 17 days now to come up with this information. And furthermore, I mean, listen, when something tragic like this happens, I don't know why people are rushing to the microphone to give press conferences. Yeah, people want to know what's going on, but if you don't know what the hell's going on, you should really stay away from the microphones. That goes to all government officials. If you want to make a brief statement and basically say we're investigating, that's it. Keep it at that. But the fact that you've gone down this road, it makes you not only look incompetent. I'm talking about the police. I'm talking about the FBI. I'm talking about all these people, because you're not presenting evidence, arguments. What's the wall? I'm getting a lot of chat over here. Greetings, everybody who's joined in the chat. Yeah, definitely there is potentially a gun grab. That's the only way we can look at this. Like all these other incidences where they say that no crises should go to waste, or you should not, whatever. What is it? The Ron Umel, the current mayor of Chicago, said don't let any crises go to waste. And that's why it really hit me when right away this Democrat congressperson from Connecticut came out the very next day talking about gun control. Okay? And basically seizing people's guns. This is not going to happen in the United States. We have the Second Amendment for a reason. It is to fight against a tyrannical government. That's how that's how 1776 came about. And that's what's enshrined in the United States Constitution. The First Amendment, right? Free speech. Because as hopefully we can decide our status, our government, our policies by free speech, which is being clamped down on now. And then Second Amendment, of course, is the right to bear arms. Now, you can twist and turn and play all you want, but the right to bear arms is to keep the American people free. No one is going to be taking your guns. Because if you try to do that, you're going to trigger a civil war. You just mark my words. That's just what's going to happen. Over 300 million guns in the United States. How many do you think you'll be able to take? You've already taken away guns in most Democrat cities, and look what that's done. Some of the highest murder rates, gun crime rates are in so-called gun-free zones, like Chicago, like Washington, D.C. So think about it. So that is really the big question. It's just a big question mark on Las Vegas. What the F? Get your story straight. So here's the second thing. First thing, maybe this guy Jose is an illegal immigrant and they wanted to keep him out of the limelight for whatever reason. I mean, does anybody conclusively come up with, was he a U.S. citizen? Was he in the country legally? Because I've not seen that. I've not seen him being defined as a U.S. citizen. I see him being defined, hailed as a hero by many, but the story keeps changing. So, did he get deported because he was now caught by ICE, involved in a violent crime? I'm not saying that he did anything bad. Whatever. The second thing is, because we don't have the narrative being pushed that this quote-unquote white man was a white supremacist, it only leads us to one thing. And you know the obvious. It's radicalized Islam. This guy was radicalized. That's the only other logical explanation, because every time they don't tell us what's going on, or they call it workplace violence, it's a cover-up for the real problem, which is hashtag Islam sucks balls. That's my words. I know Alex Jones wouldn't say that, but that's what I say here on Infowars.com. So there is hope. You know, you guys maybe are thinking, there's no hope, man. No, there's no hope. Now, a lot of people are saying that there is no hope, that it's all going down. 20 trillion in debt, millions of illegals crushing in Europe. that if it wasn't for Trump, we would have the same thing in the United States if Hillary got in. The continual importation of third world migrants who refuse to assimilate into Western culture and really have no value add, except as low skill or unskilled workers, which, what does that do? Who does that help? It doesn't help anybody except the rich who want cheap maids, or those with low skill jobs and don't want to pay American citizens a decent wage. It just drives down wages. Or the rest of them are unemployed. Okay? They said that 66% of immigrants from the third world are on welfare after 5 years of being in the country. That's a terrible thing. Whereas white people, or from white immigrants, it's around 30%. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. It's 2 to 1. That's a big difference. So some people are losing hope. I want to give you a story of hope. And that story is, as I mentioned earlier, I'm broadcasting from Krakow, Poland. And the Poles continue to prove that they don't take any crap from anybody. Now, it was, in one of my videos, I made a mention to this, and I wasn't, even though it said that they made a chain around the entire border, I wasn't sure that they actually did it. But, in fact, Polish Catholics on October the 7th made a human chain around the entire border of Poland, praying the rosary and praying that Western leaders and the West would not be destroyed by Islam. Okay, as you may know, or may or may not know, it was 9/11, I believe it was 82, 84, something around there, when the Polish cavalry, led by Jan III, King Jan III, Sobieski, defeated the Muslims at the gates of Vienna. Helped defeat. Let's say his army was the critical army to defeat the Turks at the gates of Vienna. Now, I can think of 2 things that came out of that. Number 1, Europe got coffee. Okay? Turks brought coffee with them. Number 2, the French created the croissant. Notice that it is a sickle moon-shaped croissant, moon-shaped bread product. That was a reminder of the Turks who came with their crescent moons. Okay? So that's just a fact. People should look that up. Google it. Google it. That's where that came from. So there is hope for these countries that are standing up, the peoples that are talking to their leaders and voting in center-right or even right-leaning governments that are patriotic, that are nationalistic, that want to take their countries back. There is hope. There is hope for everybody who wants to understand that it's not over. It's not over until the fat lady sings. Now, many people don't want to go down this road. I've touched on it before, and I need to touch on it again. And that road is what could happen next. Okay? Because the people who are basically have given up and said that the demographics are against Europe ever coming back, that the low birth rates are going to, by definition, turn Europe Muslim by 2050 or whatever, majority Muslim. They're forgetting history. Now, Stefan Molyneux has an expression saying that white people are really nice until they're not. And then they're not nice. Something like that. And I had the same thought around the same time that he said that. And we have no idea what could trigger white European, historically Christian people from not being nice to people who have invaded their country. We saw one such incident in London when a Londoner used Islamic tactics against them, right, by driving his car into a group of people leaving a radicalized mosque. right? I'm not recommending you do that. There's no reason to do that right yet. But that is just a sign of what possibly can happen, right? Just a little sign. Because to say that people won't react violently, violence against violence, is really a mistake. Because if these governments are not responsive to the people, and people start taking the law into their own hands for whatever reason, that's what we're going to be looking at. I mean, you have to acknowledge that is a serious possibility. Okay? Now, I want to just deviate for just a second and mention a couple of things. If you would like to support my work, I'm a musician, I'm a comedian, I'm a journalist, I'm an engineer, I do a lot of different things, but my latest album is called New Genesis, and if you'd like to check it out, you can go to holyjoe.bandcamp.com. You'll get to this page here. You can listen to all the songs on the album, and you can purchase a digital copy online. It's only $9 US. It would help us out a lot. I really appreciate it. And that's where I get the bulk of my income, really. And I really want to thank those who have purchased the album. One thing to point out, there are a lot of pro-Trump theme songs here. Really, I was inspired by the candidacy of Donald J. Trump, and I just listened to his speeches. There's 7 pro-Trump theme songs on here, including 2 bonus tracks, one about free speech and one on the TDS, or Trump Derangement Syndrome. And I think you'll really enjoy it. This really is my best work. So, that's what I wanted to say about that. I hope you don't mind. A little bit of sponsorship. Got to pay the bills. What else? The other thing is, I need to put in a plug for... one more plug, okay? More plug, and that is the InfoWars store. Infowars.com//store. You got to check out these products. And I know what I'm talking about, because if you watch my shows before, I got my own caveman. Okay? They are now shipping to Europe. They're shipping to Poland. Okay? Now I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. You got to pay the VAT, you got to pay the customs, and it's true. Unfortunately, that is what we got to do to get it in Europe. But if you're in the US, there is not a problem with that. Caveman is really amazing. True paleo formula. I mean, this is really good. The chocolate flavor I really like. I like to... I mean, actually, I was doing this before Alex said. I was mixing this with whey and milk and some cold water, shaking it up, and it's really good. And I really enjoy this stuff. And you really, as a meal replacement or as just bone broth to give you minerals, vitamins, and stuff that you're just probably not getting in your very highly processed diet that we currently have. There's specials going on all the time, and of course, if you sign up for auto ship, you get additional 10% off. And shipping is free on all orders over $50. Now, another thing, Brain Force. I use this every day. Now, they recommend you take 2 tablets every day, but I'm already fired up. I take 1 a day, but I mean, I may take 2 one day and see what happens. But I'm honestly feeling it does help with cognitive abilities, and it is seeming to fire up my prefrontal cortex, which is where a lot of the processing is done, right? True Blue Selenium, I've been trying that. I've been using that. The stuff is really awesome. I forget what exactly it's good for, but it's good for you, okay? I recommend that. These are things that I've actually tried, and I'm a product of the product, and I can tell you that these stuff are good. Secret 12. This stuff is awesome. Listen, when I was in high school, I remember going to some vitamin shop, and there it is, Secret 12, and getting these giant horse pills. They were B-complex horse pills, and it really helped me propel through my studies. I didn't feel tired. I was studying a lot, and I got straight A's, okay? And everybody was surprised because it wasn't expected, right? Or they didn't expect that a crazy guy like me would be getting straight A's, but I did it, and I believe it was because of the vitamins that I was taking. Now, I don't know what those horse pills are. I can't find them anymore, but Secret 12 is vitamin 12, and it's B vitamin, right? And you need this for a lot of stuff in your system. You're not getting in your normal products. Super Male Vitality. Okay, I thought this was a joke. This is no joke, guys. Okay? This is no joke. That's all I want to say. Do a little research on what this stuff does, and you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight, but within a couple of days, you will definitely notice a difference. Okay? Definitely will notice a difference. And it tastes good. This stuff tastes good. The other one I've been trying, Survival Shield X2. Okay, this is iodine, nascent iodine in the purest form. Now, it is true, it tastes like iodine. That's what it is. It's iodine. All right? But couple of drops every day under your tongue, it's gonna put the iodine in your thyroid and other vital organs, blocking out radicals, free radicals, and other toxins that can get into your body. Now, you think this is a joke. Listen, when Chernobyl exploded, right, in Ukraine, and a toxic cloud, a radioactive cloud came over Europe, those in the know, especially those scientists or those doctors that had access to pure iodine, gave it to themselves and their family to protect them. And I know people in Russia, because in Moscow there was or maybe it wasn't Moscow, I think it was Moscow, there was a parade one of the weekends later, and it rained on these people, and a lot of children were irradiated, and they were not told about the Chernobyl, what happened. And I met one of these such woman, and she had thyroid problems because of it. Anyway, this stuff is good for keeping you healthy and blocking out the bad stuff, the iodine. You only need a couple drops a day. Silver Bullet. This is pure, begins with a C. Silver. Colloidal. I forget how to pronounce this. Colloidal, there it is, colloidal silver, okay? So it's basically micro drops of silver suspended in pure water, okay? It tastes like water. You really don't feel anything, just a little bit. And actually, this kind of stuff actually can kill viruses and kill, look, I'm not saying it's going to cure HIV. It's not, probably not, but it will kill viruses, because silver actually destroys the virus outer membranes, stuff like that, whatever it does. But it's an incredible product, okay? I recommend all of these products. The final thing, joint formula. If you got any, like a tennis elbow, like I hurt my elbow, and I was taking these pills, I ran out of it. I don't even know if they did anything. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. This appears to be doing the same thing, okay? So these are products that you can get from the InfoWars store, so InfoWarsStore.com or InfoWars.com//store. I recommend all of them. I've used all of them. They're excellent products, and you not only are getting a good value for money, but you're also helping fight the information war, okay? Because this program is not getting any sponsors. Look, YouTube has cut people off. Anything I put up that says Alex Jones in it instantly gets monetized. But there you go. Those are, the commercials are out of the way, okay? We can be free basing for the rest of this show. At this time, I would like to invite you to call in. This is a special number, 331-HOLY-JOE or 331-465-9563. If anybody would like to call in, it's a U.S. number. It should be, pretty much free for anybody who is in the U.S. or who has a voice over IP phone. If anybody would like to call in, you're welcome to do that at this time. So 331-HOLY-JOE or 331-465-9563. So let's talk about North Korea while we're waiting for any phone calls. You can also Skype in. My Skype is Joe Bonsai. No, HOLYJOE space rock. So one word, HOLYJOE space rock. If you want to Skype in, you can certainly do that. Just go to, the username is holyjoe space rock. All right. North Korea. Let's talk about North Korea for a second. Now, this has been a festering problem, right, since the Korean conflict, which really was a proxy war between the Eastern Bloc, Russia, essentially Russia, China, the communists, and the United States or the West. And it actually never ended. It ended in a ceasefire. The war, it technically, is still on. North Korea has shelled South Korea on many occasions, shelled islands, shelled all kinds of stuff, sunk a ship. It's done all kinds of stuff, right? And basically, the latest strategy, or the strategy all along, has been to provoke the West so that they would give them money, right? It's really a terrible situation that if you compare North Korea to South Korea, it's night and day. It really, literally is night and day when you look at a map, especially at night, and you can see that basically, with the exception of the capital of North Korea, Phnom Penh, the entire North Korean part of the peninsula is black. There's no light, there's no electricity, there's no lights, right? We're compared to South Korea, which at the time of the Korean conflict was basically as poor as like Namibia, as poor as any African country. And within 2 generations, it's become one of the wealthiest countries in the world. In fact, it is a rather nice place for most people to go. Now, I remember, it was so poor. How poor was it? No, it was so poor that American military people who went there and were serving in South Korea and had to rent a place, what they call on the economy, right? So you didn't have a barracks, you didn't have a place to stay, you had to rent a house or rent a place. The South Korean entrepreneurial spirit, check it out. What they would do is they would ask, the rents were very cheap, by month. Let's say we're talking in the late 70s, early 70s even, early 70s into probably the late 80s. Rents were relatively inexpensive, right? So maybe, let's say, I'm just throwing out a number, let's say it was $200 a month. So they would ask you for 1 year's rent in advance. So maybe you'd have to pay $2,400. And usually as an American, you could either get money, because you would usually get a cost of living allowance and a housing allowance. So they would be able to do that, right? So what these South Koreans would do is then invest that money, either in a business or in some kind of enterprise, so to make money, right? They were really entrepreneurial people, and really utilize that money to build their businesses and build wealth for themselves. And it's just really an interesting story, side story, and something to think about. If you don't have any money, what can people do, right? This is just one small little technique that could be helpful. So, one person had to ask me earlier to do a video on North Korea. I have not done a deep video on that, but what I want to say is this: you can see sort of the handwriting on the wall. Under the Clinton administration, that was 8 years, they gave North Korea nuclear reactors. They gave North Korea fissile materials. Okay? Why? Why? But they did. They did. Okay? I remember hearing the Bill Clinton speech where he said, this is a great deal for everybody involved, blah, blah, blah. Look how it turned out. Okay? Then after Bill Clinton, we had W. Bush or Bush Jr., right? 43. Nothing really changed. Of course, under Obama, nothing changed as well, right? It just continued to get worse and worse. Nobody really stood up to North Korea. Now, there's many theories about what the current leader is doing. Now, this kid, I call him a kid, right? The fat pumpkin that he looks like. He actually went to school in Switzerland. Okay, so he was Western educated. I'll put that in quotes because people that knew him said that he was not a very good student. And it may be just that he was spoiled. Who knows what? Who knows? I don't want to speculate. Maybe he was homesick. I don't want to speculate. But they have said that he was not a very good student. That may be here nor there. It's just talk, okay? But he was at least Western educated. Obviously, I'm pretty sure he speaks English. I'm pretty sure he may even speak some German or Swiss Deutsch, Swiss German. He can't be that stupid, okay? But well, I mean, what's the point of spending all of your money trying to build nuclear weapons that if you were to use them, your country will be destroyed, where at the same time you're holding back the progress of your people, of your country? And we just have to look at South Korea as an example of what could have been, or what could be, what can be, if the leadership changes direction, right? Changes its approach. So I think, remember this mother of all bombs, the Moab, was dropped in Afghanistan? And that was the first time it was used in conflict, okay? Now, of course, we had these so-called daisy cutters from the Vietnam War, which were also big bombs, but not as big as the Moab. Now, I believe that that not only was a test in Afghanistan because the concussion power of this thing is essentially, what is it, like 25,000 tons, right? 25 is equivalent to 25,000 tons of TNT. I mean, that's pretty close to a Hiroshima bomb, which I think was equivalent to 25,000 pounds. Yeah, that's 25 tons, not 25,000 tons. So it's a fraction of the 10,000 tons that the Hiroshima bomb was. This is about a quarter of that, right? 2.5 thousand tons, or whatever. And I think that was a test to see the destructive power of this Moab. Now just imagine the Moab being utilized in North Korea. You know, the B-2 bombers have been flying over there. Now we know that the payload is something like 25, at least maybe still classify the actual payload, but it's got to be close to 30,000 pounds or 30 tons. Okay, at least non-metric tons. Yeah, and this thing would kill everything within a mile. Not just the concussion, not just the blast, but the concussion, right? It's going to blow out your eardrums. It's just going to crush you. It's the crushing power of such a bomb. So if you didn't want to go nuclear in North Korea, and the fear is that North Koreans have this, you know, whatever the number is, 20, 30,000 recoilless rifles or recoilless, yeah, they call them rifles, right? Howitzer type things. Some of them are hidden in mountains, mountain ranges. That can pull out, can pull in, pull out. Again, the bomb in Afghanistan was dropped in a mountain, in a valley, and it destroyed. Think about the shock wave going. And if you got mountains, it's going to contain the shock wave, right? Making the bomb that much more powerful, right? And even the reverberation of those shock waves. So you're not going to be safe. You're probably not going to be safe, especially if you crack the door and look to see if anything's happening. But, I mean, imagine this. A conventional first strike against North Korea where not only, you know, a multitude of cruise missiles are launched, but another multitude of Moabs are dropped along that defensive line just north of the DMZ, destroying all this artillery. Now, it does not mean that Seoul won't be attacked, won't be lit up, won't be hit up, but that may be what Trump was thinking when he said there will be fire and fury. Okay, he could be talking nuclear as well. I mean, we have tactical nukes that could easily penetrate, burrow into these mountains, and just blow them up, effectively ending the North Korean regime as it is. But for those who have been saying, who have TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, and have been insisting that Donald J. Trump doesn't know what he's doing, and blah, 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 et cetera, right? We know, what was it? Eminem just came out with his stupid-ass video, which I did a mocking video about, where basically it was F Trump, right? F Trump, oh, how brave, right? But if you think about the strategy that I think Trump has been deploying with regard to North Korea, it's obviously it's China. It's China. It's in your backyard. This is your little pit bull. And if you think you're going to threaten the world with North Korea for long, I mean, those days are over, right? It's not going to happen. So China really, if it wants to continue, look, we really are holding all the cards in terms of China. A lot of people don't think so. A lot of people think that China is going to take over the United States. They're the same people who said that Japan was going to take over, and look what happened to Japan. I'm sorry, it's sad what happened to Japan, but it just didn't happen the way people thought it would happen, right? Then they were saying that because of the rate of growth of the Japanese market, that it would take over the United States. And it's been in recession really for quite literally over 20 years, really close to 30 years now, or just stagnant growth, right? And we don't know a lot about what happens in Japan because the Japanese people are rather, at least they have been historically, rather quiet about it. I mean, I know stories of business guys that lost their jobs but didn't tell their wives, still got dressed in their suit and tie every morning and went and left the house, came back after 5, and no one knows what they did, right? They just went somewhere because they didn't want to tell their wives they didn't have a job. And so that's a real story, and that's not even a rare story. So anyway, I'll maybe do a report on Japan at some other time. My experience in Japan, that was in 1999, and I gotta tell you, I was not impressed. I was not impressed. Okay, I wanted to be impressed. I was waiting to be impressed. But the experience there was obviously not impressed, and that's when I realized that the whole thing was a facade. I mean, it was either an idea to sell books or who knows what it was. But after visiting Japan in 1999, I just knew that the whole Japan's going to take over the world was just a non-starter. Okay, it was a nice idea, it was a nice theory, but it wasn't true. Same thing with China. China has a lot of weaknesses, and one of their weaknesses is that they are dependent almost entirely. Hey, Jeju just joined us. They are entirely dependent upon exports for the, like let's say 90, whatever it is, some 90% of their economy. Maybe that's not correct, but definitely the majority of their economy is dependent on exports. So where do they export to? Europe and the United States. The United States is the biggest export market for China. So if we do anything to minimize that export capability to the United States, they are screwed. They really are. And what I think the Communist Party of China fears most is regime change. Okay? Because that's sort of the bargain that they made with their people, that they would at least be economically successful, at least those that can achieve it, as long as they wouldn't be anti-government. And that's a bargain that can't hold if they're not able to provide that economic stability for their people in China. So someone's asking me about Colby steel fraud. I am not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that. Sorry about that. So that is what's happening with North Korea. I mean, North Korea, if people are really irrational actors, and if the young Kim, if he really cared about his people, really, I mean, you would think that there would be some kind of a process by which he would be able to liberalize his economy and free up his people. And we're seeing that not happening, which is really pretty sad. Yeah, Lil Kim, or what do they call it? Rocket Man. You would think that would be really something that you would want to do for your people, right? If you really love your people. And these people treat him like a god, right? As they treated his grandfather and his father before that. So, yeah. Drejuf, I haven't heard about that, and I'll have to look into that. There's apparently a fraud being occurring regarding steel being sold for car manufacturing. I'm assuming that's in Europe. That's not as big a story as what's happening to the Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Foundation. Now, if anybody read Clinton Cash, right? This exposed the Clinton Foundation for what it was, a pay-per-play foundation. And I could see how you could argue that wasn't the case if it only happened once or twice. But there was a repeated pattern of governments and companies making contributions to the Clinton Foundation, and then Hillary Clinton providing waivers as she was the Secretary of State, and only she could do that, or she's only one of a few people who could do it, provided waivers for these companies or countries to do certain things. So one of the things was the waiver that I believe it was, I don't want to misquote, but I believe it was Siemens, to allow Siemens to sell stuff to Iran. Okay? The second thing was, obviously, the Uranium One deal, where the Clinton Foundation received something like $150 million from some of the top shareholders in the company. And then she gave them the waiver to acquire some 22, a little bit over 20% of the uranium that the United States has. Okay? And Russia provides uranium to who? To Iran. All right? So that is a bad thing. It's not a good thing. So anyway, we have two things here. Number one, we have definite prima facie evidence. I mean, if you didn't believe the book, The Clinton Cash, now we have actual prima facie evidence that the Clintons were involved in paper play. Now, what does that mean? It means hashtag lock her up. It really does. It means that Jeff Sessions needs to open the investigation on the Russian collusion that Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation was involved in. Okay? Furthermore, Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, needs to recuse himself and get involved to end the Russian collusion delusion against Donald J. Trump. Because as we heard from Van Jones from CNN, it's a nothing burger. We know there's nothing there. It's October. In less than 3 weeks, it will be 1 year since the election, and there is no evidence put forward showing that there's been any collusion between the Trump administration or Donald Trump and the Russian government. But we have evidence of the Russians, the Russian government, Russian companies, definitely peddling their influence, doing pay-per-play with Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation. That has to be investigated. And that has to be investigated. And you can help out. Look, I'm tired of people complaining and not giving you something that you can do. This is really simple. You write a letter to Jeff Sessions. I know what you're saying. I don't have his address. You write a letter to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Washington, D.C., USA. It will get to him. And you ask him to unrecuse himself from the Russian investigation against Donald J. Trump, and that you end it. And number two, that you open a investigation, a criminal investigation against Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation with regards to the Russian connection and other connections, including several oil-rich Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and others that gave millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. In exchange for what? In exchange for what? Okay, that has to be looked into. My suspicion is that these governments were pushing for the radicalization and the Muslim Brotherhood in many of these countries in the so-called Arab Spring. The Arab Spring was a terrible, it turned out to be a terrible, terrible thing. But think about it. Think about who was deposed. Now, there may have been initially some good, when it was a organic sort of movement, really a resistance to the government that was really oppressing the people, because it started out with a simple guy, a simple tradesman setting himself on fire in Algeria, I believe. I believe it was Algeria or Morocco, one of those shitholes. But I digress. But then it was hijacked by the globalists, and you can see, like Mubarak from Egypt. Mubarak had to go. Why? Why did Mubarak have to go? I've been to Egypt. It is a shithole, but at least Mubarak kept it together. And then they allowed the Muslim Brotherhood to be elected, and of course you saw what was happening there. They tried to turn the place into an Islamic hellhole, and the military had to step in to take it over, okay, and restabilize the country, which basically basically back to where it was under Mubarak, okay. You've got a strong man keeping the country secular for the most part, and I want to say relatively prosperous. That's, maybe not the right phraseology, but if you are not Egyptian, you cannot have contact with the Egyptian people as a tourist. You cannot. You are there with basically armed guards. If you go on any of these tours to the pyramids or to any of these places, museums, you just can't mingle with the population. Now, I'm not saying that people haven't done it. People can't do it. But if you go to any of these resorts, like along the Red Sea, you cannot leave the resort. You're basically caged in. And that's for your own safety. That's for your own safety. Okay? So that's the status of Egypt. It's a sad, sad thing. It's a sad, sad thing. And if you look at the history of Egypt, you really have to ask yourself, was Egypt better off under the control of the Romans? Seriously, when the Romans took over Egypt and basically made it part of the breadbasket of Egypt, because that's where they really needed the wheat to feed Rome, to feed the Romans, before Sicily came online. Well, Sicily was also a big breadbasket as well. You have to wonder, really, that Islam, and I'm talking about Islam being the negative factor here, that before Islam, Egypt was a totally different country, obviously. But was it as bad as it is today? And that's something that really should be looked at, should be considered. You know that Egypt was a Christian country. Egypt was one of 268 Christian dioceses throughout the northern Africa and the so-called Levant, the Middle East. It was all Christian before Muhammad came along. And that, no one talks about that. No one mentions that, right? No one mentions that. These countries were all Christian. Whether they be Coptic Christian in the case of Egypt, or Orthodox Christian in the case of some of the Middle Eastern countries, or Roman Catholic, or whatever they were all Christian countries. And for the most part, their lives were a lot different than they are today under Islam. So that's something to think about. What else we got? I was going somewhere with that. Oh yeah, so Jeff Sessions, so Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Washington, D.C., USA. If you're out of the country. Obviously, if you're in the U.S., you don't have to put USA on there, although it doesn't hurt. It'll get to him. So ask him to investigate, to re-engage with, to get back involved, get involved in this whole Russian investigation with Trump and stop it. Okay, Trump can stop it legally, and so can the Attorney General. He could reassert himself and say, listen, I'm back in the game. There's nothing here. It's been over a year. We're ending this. It's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. And there's nothing. It's a nothing burger. And number two, open the investigation as Trump said that he would start up a independent criminal prosecutor to look into her activity. Now, I know that Trump tried to make peace with the left, make peace with the Hillary people by saying that he didn't want to hurt her, but it has to happen. I think it has to happen. Because as you're seeing For instance, in the case of the left going after Trump for making a locker room comment on a bus to a guy on an open mic over 10 years ago, and then we see what happens with Harvey Weinstein and Hollywood. We see that everything that the left accuses conservatives of, they are guilty of it, usually 10 times more. Okay, so pretty much the fact that they're accusing Trump of a Russian collusion, it's really a cover for their own collusion that we have seen, that is happening, that has happened, and there's evidence of it now, real evidence of it now, and it has to be investigated. So that's some action that you can take. It's a small action. We're talking about, look, one piece of paper, one envelope, and one stamp. You write to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, Washington, D.C., USA, and you say, please unrecuse yourself from the Russian investigation against Donald J. Trump. Please end that. It's a nothing burger. And number two, please impanel an independent prosecutor to look into the Clinton Foundation and the activities of Hillary Clinton as she was Secretary of State. Okay, the 33,000 missing emails. The 33,000 missing emails, where are they? Supposedly the NSA has them and told Mueller that we have the emails, do you want them? And he said no. So the NSA may not be the only people who have these missing emails. But that is what's happening, and that has to be dealt with seriously. So we're getting close to the end of our time here. Is there anybody who would like to call in on this very special broadcast? You can 331 Holy Joe, 331-465-9563. We're standing by to take your calls, or you can Skype in at Holy Joe space rock. Yeah, AlphaGo just mentioned in the chat that there are 33,000 U.S. gun deaths a year, and there's 33,000 missing emails. Is it a coincidence? That's funny. But the Democrats definitely are desperate, and it really speaks to their lack of imagination, their lack of focus, and what I'm afraid to say is their lack of direction. And it's been happening, if you think about it, it's really been happening ever since JFK died. JFK was assassinated, right? It's really been happening ever since then, that the Democratic Party is moving more left and left and left. And if you think about JFK, some of his speeches against Russia or against taxes on the economy, JFK is in many respects even to the right of Donald Trump. That's where the window has shifted, right? That Donald Trump is really a moderate in most cases. And that even Bill Clinton, when he gave speeches on illegal immigration, he was definitely to the right of Donald Trump, okay? At least in words, okay? In deeds, what did he do? He really didn't do anything. Really nothing. So these are things that have to be understood and not ignored, not just swept under the carpet, okay? These are really, it's the reality, and it has to be understood that that's really what's happening. It's what's been happening. My final thoughts, I've got just 4 minutes left here before I need to close. My final thoughts are going to be predictions on the 2018 elections. We can already see that there is going to be a lot of rhinos and so-called rhinos. These Republicans that have been talking, for instance, about repeal and replace Obamacare for the last 7 or 8 years and have done diddly squat. They're going to be primaried out, or I would say they're going to definitely have very serious primary challenges, and for the most part, they're going to be primaried out. Better to have a Democrat that you know is against you than a Republican who's going to backstab you, right? And we're going to probably see a sweep in the House and the Senate of, I would call them new Republicans or Trump Republicans that are going to support the Trump agenda. So if we don't see a lot of movement on the Trump agenda before 2018, we are definitely going to see the majority of the movement after that election. It's unfortunate that Congress is working like that, and you might argue that, well, the Republicans were just as anti-Obama as the Democrats are, but you have to agree that at least the Republicans were it was based on the agenda, right? It was based on the ideology that Obama was bringing to the table. It wasn't based on some kind of Russian collusion, although there was the birth certificate thing. Okay, I'll give you that. That was something to think about. But it's not the same thing as Russian collusion and a whole witch hunt for something that didn't happen, that isn't happening. So I want to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity to speak to you from the Infowars.com Alex Jones Show. I'm Holy Joe Rock and Roll, reminding you to always make it happen for the captain, because you're the captain. This has been a special Holy Joe Rock and Roll Show, live and unscripted, and I will see you next time.